everybody, my name is Christian, and this is the first video that I've ever been doing for my sand casting. As you can see in front of me, I have my cope and my drag, and it's already been rammed up, and the pattern for the pair of core plates have been done following the first book of the charcoal foundry. I do have a propane foundry as opposed to the charcoal foundry that I've been preparing to make some sand casted items. I really am looking forward to following along with the Gingery lathe, and so that'll be today's first bit, is getting this pair of core plates done. Hopefully in the near future I can work on the ball cranks, and then after the ball cranks start with the bedways that I've already made the patterns for. So I'm going to begin by putting this guy together, getting my furnace started up, melting down. I've got, I guess, 3 pucks of aluminum in there, which should be enough to, more than enough to fill this guy. And so I'm looking forward to this very first cast. So here we go. So while my furnace is heating up, I figured I'd speed up the video and talk a little bit about my setup. In the back, you can see a 100-pound propane tank that runs into a burner that I have built myself. The parts come from basically the big box store. It's a bunch of copper fittings that all go together. I also drilled and tapped some holes that go into the various pieces. I'll link a video in the description below that shows the burner setup that I followed along with. From there it goes through a tweer, which is just a corner pipe of chain link fence, and then it goes into my 2 3-gallon buckets that I have there. The 3-gallon buckets are filled with cement from the, I believe it's the Backyard Casting. I'll put a link to that place in the description down below. But essentially he had his own refractory mix, and that refractory mix is what I used and followed along with. Now, he used a coffee can for the inner parts of his stuff. I went and bought these 2-foot long pieces of 6-inch PVC and used those instead. I have 12 screws in each of them that are drilled in and plugged into the cement, and then I used a piece of 3-inch PVC for the top part and a 2-inch PVC for the bottom, as well as an 1.5-inch dowel cut in half that I used for drainage to that bottom hole. On the left is basically my green sand holder. I've got about 100 pounds of green sand in there, and then I just grabbed some nice MDF board like you would use for shelving units in a closet, and cut those down into the specific sizes that I would need for my flasks. And then down below I have just kind of the sand pit that I've built up, and the sand pit is there just so that when I'm pouring molten aluminum, if some should spill, it won't land on my garage floor, and instead it'll end up in the sand, and that way I don't have to worry about the possibility of exploding cement, because the molten aluminum is nice and hot. So yeah, that's my pretty small setup. The sand bin is on casters, so I can roll it back and forth. I have just off screen a bucket full of water that I can pour the hot metal into to get it to cool off. And then in the back on the right, I have another flask that I've built for following along with the Gingery lathe. Yeah, that's pretty much all of my setup. It's pretty simple. I think I've spent maybe, I want to say $200 getting the whole thing up and running. Probably the most expensive part of any of it was going to a ceramic store and buying the 90 mesh sand as well as the fire clay. I want to say those two, the 2 bags of sand were $20 each, I think, and then it was, I think, about $15 or so for the fire clay that I used in my mixes. But fortunately, it's pretty readily available, not super expensive. And then the aluminum that I have is basically melted down cans from work and friends who have given them to me, as well as some extruded pieces of a greenhouse. A friend of mine has a deteriorating greenhouse, and he decided he would just give me the aluminum from that. So I melted all those down previously, poured them into that muffin tray to make these little pucks, which are easier to manage, easier to stick into my crucible, and go from there. The crucible that you'll see in a bit is a number 6 silicon carbide crucible that I bought from Amazon. It was recommended for beginners to get the silicon carbide. They're a bit harder to break by heating them up and stuff. So I bought that on a recommendation. Not really a whole lot else. Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's not much else to it. You'll see I've got a nice long piece of 1/4-inch steel that I use to stir up the crucible. I also got some of the aluminum stuck on it, so I was just cooling it off and getting it off of there. And then when I go to stir it just a little bit more, that little bit does finally come off. So yeah, I'm pretty thrilled with my setup. It works pretty well, as you'll see through the rest of this video, and I am definitely looking forward to working on that Gingery lathe. Nice bubble of aluminum. Melted down 3 of my pucks that I had earlier. Actually, that doesn't quite look hot enough yet. It's almost solidifying on top the moment you move it. So I'm going to heat this stuff up some more. Get it nice and molten. So let's give this a shot. Interesting. I've almost filled up the sprue with those 3 ingots. If I get a closer up picture, you'll see that it's right at the surface here. Get up a little bit closer. And it's just right there, like just about maybe an inch, inch and a half away from the top of the sprue there. So I didn't have enough to pour extra ingots. I guess I'm glad I did 3 pucks rather than anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it here, and once it's cooled down, I'll break it on open. All right, a few minutes have passed, and well, more than a few minutes. Let's see how this thing did. Still quite a bit warm there. There we go. That doesn't look too shabby. Whew, still hot though. Definitely don't want to be grabbing that with bare hands. That's all right though, because I have a pair of channel locks here that I can grab it with. Not too bad on the surface scaling. Doesn't look like there's any dents in it or anything else, and it's about the 1/4 inch thick, so I should be able to just grind off a little bit of extra areas. I'm going to dunk it in some water though, just to chill it down. There we go. Alright. Not too bad for my first time ever. Very cool. I'm excited. It's been a lot of fun playing with it so far. But these are the core plates. They have a slight bevel to the sides, but it is the first recommended cast from the first Gingery book, the Charcoal Foundry. Like I say, I used a nice propane foundry rather than charcoal, but yeah, it turned out very nice. I'm actually pretty impressed with that. It's not too bad. I'm going to take it to a sander and sand that puppy down, and then I'll show you guys later.